So many designers find it helpful to choose to work with the principle of genus loci, whether this is in a purely physical fashion, where they may reference the outer landscape, bringing the shapes, the plants, the atmosphere into their own garden and thus anchoring the site, or whether they're drawing inspiration from conceptual happenings and the conceptual history of the site or the surrounding area.
Here at Thames Barrier Park in London, we can see how the undulating hedges reference the waves of the nearby River Thames. This conceptual garden at the Garden Festival of Chaumont-sur-Loire in France uses a more conceptual theme in this woodland clearing.
The usage of genus loci as a governing principle design is not a modern idea. Both Capability Brown and Repton use this idea to influence their own designs. For instance, they would take the natural elements in their landscape and they would enhance them, such as extending a lake or dramatising natural undulations in the ground. They would also use the theory of genus loci to anchor the site, borrowing fields and views, including sheep sometimes, from the existing landscape. They could do this easily by the means of ha-ha, which creates a physical boundary, but not a visual boundary.
And here in the 18th century landscape, Stourhead in Dorset, we can see how the natural landscape has been tamed, especially with the introduction of the bridge for a more dramatic effect. This infinity swimming pool in a hotel in Sri Lanka clearly shows a linking of the two water elements in this picture, the swimming pool and the surrounding lake.
However, due to the rapid exchange of information nowadays, through the advancements in communication technology and travel, wonderful magazines, we're very familiar, as designers and inhabitants of spaces, we become more and more familiar with these far-flung places, and actually our sense of place and our sense of our place within the world has expanded into ever-widening circles, increasing outwards. Therefore, as designers, we're going to definitely be influenced by what's happening abroad, what's happening in the next county, in the next country towards us, and this will naturally filter into our designs.
The Albert Kahn Garden in Paris is a brilliant example of a Japanese-themed garden in a European city. And here we can see Tom Stuart Smith using an obvious Italian formal influence in his Chelsea show garden.
With the globalisation of companies, such as chain stores, whether this is food or building industry, there's become an autonomy of design now. So the local vernacular in terms of architecture or areas famous for certain types of produce are becoming less and less. We're so familiar now with seeing the same shops on the same high street that actually our sense of very specific place and genus loci has to an extent been quite lost. This dilution of local character can lead to a lack of identity, not only in an area, but within the inhabitants of an area. This can make people feel quite unsettled, as though they don't really know their boundaries, they don't know where their sense of place ends. As designers, of course, we can work this sense of identity and the local vernacular back into our designs. Perhaps this is what people need. There is a plus side, obviously, to the autonomy of globalisation, which is a greater sense of freedom. So therefore, is genus loci a valid principle to work with? Should we be creating these very distinct and isolated areas, or should actually we be looking towards a more sense of global harmony and autonomy? So now that I've put forward the notion of genus loci to you, it's time for you to do the work now. Firstly, you need to go and find 3 areas, local to you perhaps, that have a distinct but differing atmosphere, ideally physically different as well, such as maybe a natural landscape, an actual architectural building, and maybe somewhere quite modern. So find those, and then I want you to be able to write down, have time to think about the very particular quality of space and place that they each have. So now that you have found these 3 sites that for you have a sense of genus loci, you may wish to record some of these in your personal development journal. We now want to share our findings with the rest of the group in the workshops. So therefore you can use these sites to reference when discussing the following questions. Firstly, do you think genus loci is a viable principle with which to govern modern garden design? Secondly, what are the physical, emotional, or conceptual boundaries that delineate an area of supposed genus loci? Can a modern design have genus loci? And finally, does a site of historic significance automatically have a sense of genus loci?